Lily Hart, a hard-working single mother, just wanted to give her son Ethan an unforgettable adventure, a first flight to a sunny beach destination. For 7-year-old Ethan, it was a dream come true, a chance to see the clouds up close and let his imagination soar. But what began as an exciting journey quickly turned into a tense ordeal when a stern flight attendant, Carol, reprimanded Ethan harshly for his innocent curiosity. The incident left Lily humiliated, Ethan confused, and the passengers around them uncomfortable. Observing it all from first class was Michael Brooks, a senior airline executive who couldn't ignore the tension rippling through the cabin. Michael's decision to step in would set off a chain of events that no one could have predicted. As the flight landed, the repercussions of the confrontation began to unfold. For Carol, it was a moment of reckoning, forcing her to confront her own behavior. For Lily and Ethan, it marked the start of a journey filled with unexpected kindness, personal growth, and even creative inspiration. And for Michael, it became a pivotal moment in his mission to reshape the airline's culture and values. What changes will one small act of kindness set in motion? How will Carol, Lily, Ethan, and Michael navigate the challenges ahead? And how does this seemingly ordinary flight lead to a story that will touch countless lives? Lily Hart adjusted the straps of her overpacked carry-on bag, glancing down at her 7-year-old son, Ethan. His small hand gripped hers tightly as they waited in the crowded terminal. For Ethan, this was the adventure of a lifetime, his very first flight. For Lily, it was a mix of excitement and apprehension. Ethan's voice bubbled with enthusiasm as he fired questions one after another. "Mom, do you think the clouds will look like giant marshmallows? And how does the plane even stay up in the air? Is it like a bird or more like a spaceship?" Lily smiled, despite her weariness. "I think you'll have to see for yourself, Ethan. Maybe you can tell me what it's like after we're up there." Their trip was a long-awaited getaway to a beach destination. Lily had scrimped and saved for months, setting aside a few dollars at a time from her paycheck as a receptionist at a local dental clinic. Her days were often exhausting, balancing work, bills, and Ethan's boundless energy. But this trip was her way of giving him a memory to hold on to. Ethan wore a bright green t-shirt featuring his favorite cartoon character, and his tiny backpack was stuffed with snacks, crayons, and a sketch pad. His excitement radiated from him, a stark contrast to the hurried, harried energy of the other passengers. When their boarding group was called, Ethan tugged Lily eagerly toward the gate. "We're finally going, Mom! We're really going!" Lily laughed softly. "Yes, we are, buddy. Let's find our seats." Once on the plane, Ethan immediately pressed his face to the window, marveling at the sight of the massive wings stretching out against the tarmac. He chattered nonstop as Lily stowed their bags and buckled him into his seat. Seated nearby was a flight attendant named Carol. She appeared to be in her mid-40s, with a polished uniform and a no-nonsense demeanor. Her posture was rigid, her expression sharp, as her eyes darted over the cabin, inspecting passengers and overhead compartments. As the plane taxied to the runway, Ethan leaned slightly into the aisle to get a better view of the plane's interior. His curiosity was innocent, but it caught Carol's attention. "Young man, you need to sit back properly," Carol said sharply, her voice loud enough to draw attention. Startled, Ethan froze, his wide eyes darting to Lily. Lily immediately intervened, her voice calm but protective. "I'm sorry. He's just excited it's his first time flying." Carol's stern gaze shifted to Lily. "This isn't a playground," she said curtly. "Passengers need to follow the rules." The air in the cabin grew tense as nearby passengers glanced toward the interaction. Lily felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She placed a comforting hand on Ethan's shoulder and guided him back into his seat. "It won't happen again," Lily said quietly, her tone measured as she tried to de-escalate the situation. Carol gave a terse nod and walked briskly down the aisle, leaving an awkward silence in her wake. Ethan's excitement had deflated like a punctured balloon. He glanced up at Lily, his voice barely above a whisper. "Did I do something wrong, Mom?" Lily's heart ached at the question. She leaned in close, her voice soft but firm. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. You were just being curious, and that's okay." From his seat in first class, Michael Brooks, a senior executive with the airline, had observed the entire exchange. Dressed in a tailored suit, he was returning from a business meeting and had intended to spend the flight catching up on emails. But the raised voices and the visible discomfort of the passengers drew his attention. Michael was a man who prided himself on professionalism and empathy, qualities he believed should be central to the airline's values. As he watched Carol's interaction with the young boy and his mother, a frown creased his brow. Something about the exchange felt wrong, and he decided to intervene. After the plane reached cruising altitude, Michael rose from his seat and made his way toward the galley. Carol was there, organizing drink carts with precise, almost mechanical movements. "Excuse me," Michael said politely, his tone even. Carol turned, startled by his presence. "Yes, sir? How can I assist you?" Michael's calm gaze met hers. "I'd like to speak with you about what happened earlier." Carol's posture stiffened. "Is there an issue?" Michael nodded slightly. "Yes. Your interaction with the young boy and his mother, it seemed unnecessarily harsh. I understand the importance of enforcing safety rules, but tone and approach matter just as much." Carol's lips pressed into a thin line. "I was doing my job, ensuring the rules were followed." "I don't doubt your intention," Michael replied, his voice steady. "But the way it came across left an impression on the passengers around you, and not a positive one. Sometimes, a little kindness can go a long way." Carol didn't respond immediately, her grip tightening on the clipboard in her hands. "I'd like you to reflect on this," Michael added, his tone firm but not unkind. "Consider how you might have handled it differently." With that, Michael returned to his seat, leaving Carol to process his words. Back in the cabin, Lily focused on calming Ethan. She encouraged him to take out his sketchpad, and soon he was absorbed in drawing a colorful scene of an airplane flying through fluffy white clouds. As Lily watched him, her initial embarrassment began to give way to gratitude. She noticed Michael's brief conversation with Carol and sensed that he was addressing what had happened. Though she didn't know who he was, his small act of advocacy made her feel less alone. The hum of the plane filled the cabin as passengers settled into their routines, but the undercurrent of tension remained. Lily leaned back in her seat, her hand resting protectively on Ethan's. This flight wasn't going as smoothly as she had hoped, but she was determined to make the most of the journey. Carol stood in the galley, her hands busy organizing the drink carts, though her mind was far from the task at hand. Michael Brooks's words replayed in her head like a looping recording. His tone had been calm, but firm, leaving little room for argument. She prided herself on maintaining order during flights, yet his observations had struck a nerve. "Consider how you might have handled it differently," he had said. She sighed, shaking her head as she set a stack of napkins on the counter. The stress of back-to-back flights and the constant demands of her job often felt like too much, but she had never questioned whether her attitude contributed to that strain. As she reached for a stack of cups, Michael entered the galley again, his presence quiet but commanding. Carol straightened instinctively. "Carol," he began, his voice low enough not to attract attention. "I want to make one thing clear. This isn't about undermining your authority. It's about ensuring every passenger feels respected. It's the cornerstone of what we do." Her lips parted as if to argue, but she stopped herself. Instead, she gave a curt nod. "Understood, sir." Michael studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Thank you." With that, he turned and returned to his seat in first class. As he walked past Lily and Ethan, he paused briefly. Lily noticed his glance and offered a small, cautious smile, unsure of his role, but grateful for his subtle acknowledgement. Michael nodded in return before resuming his seat. Ethan, still engrossed in his sketchpad, was unaware of the exchange. His focus was on adding the finishing touches to a vibrant airplane soaring through puffy clouds. "Mom, do you think I can show this to the pilot when we land?" Ethan asked, his voice bubbling with excitement once more. Lily's heart warmed at his resilience. "I think that's a wonderful idea, sweetheart." Elsewhere in the cabin, the earlier tension had not gone unnoticed. Passengers exchanged quiet glances and whispers, speculating about what had transpired. Some appeared sympathetic toward Lily and Ethan, while others seemed content to let the matter fade into the background. Rachel, a younger and more easygoing flight attendant, moved gracefully through the aisle, offering snacks and drinks. Unlike Carol's brusque demeanor, Rachel's interactions were warm and genuine. When she reached Lily and Ethan's row, she crouched slightly to meet Ethan at eye level. "Hi there," she said with a kind smile. "What are you working on?" Ethan held up his sketchpad proudly. "It's a plane flying through the clouds." Rachel's smile widened. "That's fantastic. You're a great artist. You know, we love when passengers share their artwork with us. Would you mind if I showed this to the rest of the crew?" Ethan's eyes lit up. "Really? You think they'd like it?" "I'm sure they will," Rachel said, her voice warm. Lily watched the exchange with a mix of gratitude and relief. Rachel's kindness felt like a balm after the earlier confrontation, and it reminded her that not everyone on the flight saw passengers as burdens. After taking the drawing, Rachel continued down the aisle, her friendly demeanor helping to shift the mood of the cabin. Meanwhile, in first class, Michael discreetly pulled out his phone and began typing a message to his team on the ground. Subject: Immediate follow-up. Needed details. Please review the personnel record for Carol Andrews, Senior Flight Attendant on Flight 287. Specifically, look for any prior passenger complaints or incidents involving conduct. Handle this delicately. I want to ensure fairness while addressing the issue. Satisfied, he sent the message and leaned back in his seat, his mind turning over the events of the day. Michael wasn't one to act impulsively, but he understood the importance of addressing problems as they arose. The airline's reputation depended on its commitment to excellence, and incidents like this, however minor they seemed, had a way of leaving lasting impressions. As the plane cruised smoothly at 30,000 feet, Carol remained in the galley, her movements robotic. Despite her attempt to focus on her duties, Michael's words weighed heavily on her. She glanced toward the cabin, her gaze lingering on Ethan and Lily. The boy's laughter drifted back toward her, light and carefree, as he shared a joke with his mother. The sound stirred an uncomfortable pang of regret in Carol's chest. By the time Rachel returned the sketchpad to Ethan, the cabin atmosphere had softened. Ethan eagerly flipped through his drawings, his earlier discomfort forgotten. "Mom, Rachel said my drawing is going to the crew's bulletin board," Ethan exclaimed, his excitement rekindled. "That's wonderful, Ethan," Lily said, her voice gentle but firm. "I'm so proud of you." As the plane hummed through the skies, Lily leaned back, her thoughts a mix of relief and lingering unease. The flight wasn't over, and neither, it seemed, was the ripple effect of the earlier conflict. The hum of the plane's engines filled the cabin as the flight continued smoothly. Most passengers settled into their routines, reading, napping, or gazing out the windows. But the earlier tension lingered, an unspoken ripple that kept the atmosphere slightly uneasy. Carol moved mechanically through her tasks, her mind replaying Michael Brooks's pointed words in the galley. She had brushed off complaints before, attributing them to demanding passengers or the stress of her job, but something about this encounter unsettled her. From her seat, Lily glanced toward Ethan, who was now drawing a bustling beach scene with palm trees and colorful umbrellas. His earlier discomfort seemed to have faded, but for Lily, the sting of Carol's harsh tone lingered. "Mom, do you think the beach will have lots of shells?" Ethan asked without looking up. I bet it will, Lily replied, stroking his hair gently. We'll find the best ones together. Ethan's grin returned, and he continued shading the waves on his page. Nearby, Rachel worked her way through the cabin, her cheerful demeanor drawing smiles from passengers. She paused at Ethan and Lily's row again, crouching slightly to speak to them. How's my favorite artist doing? Rachel asked, her warm tone soothing. Good, Ethan said excitedly, holding up his new drawing. That's fantastic, Rachel said, her admiration genuine. She turned to Lily and added in a quieter voice, Your son has such a creative spirit. It's wonderful to see. Lily smiled, the kindness lifting her spirits. Thank you. He's been looking forward to this trip for months. Rachel nodded. It shows. If you need anything during the flight, just let me know. As Rachel moved on, Lily felt a flicker of gratitude. Rachel's warmth was a stark contrast to Carol's earlier behavior, and it reminded her that kindness still had a way of shining through. Meanwhile, whispers continued to circulate among passengers. A man across the aisle leaned toward Lily and said quietly, That attendant earlier, she's been tense all flight. I saw what happened. It wasn't right. Lily gave a small nod, unsure how to respond. She appreciated the support, but the attention also made her uneasy. In first class, Michael Brooks remained observant. He had spent years building the airline's reputation for customer care, and he knew how easily a single incident could tarnish that image. His phone buzzed with a reply from his ground team. Subject: Requested information details. Carol Andrews has 2 prior complaints on record for inappropriate passenger interactions. No formal action was taken in either case, but both incidents involved tone and approach rather than protocol violations. Michael's jaw tightened as he read the message. The pattern was troubling. He slipped the phone into his pocket and glanced toward the galley, where Carol was tidying the service cart. Carol felt Michael's eyes on her, and her hands trembled slightly as she stacked cups. The earlier confrontation had rattled her more than she wanted to admit, and now she struggled to maintain her composure. Hey, Rachel said softly, stepping into the galley. Carol looked up, her guard immediately rising. What is it? Rachel hesitated, her expression concerned. I just wanted to check in. Are you okay? I'm fine, Carol snapped, though her tone lacked its usual confidence. Rachel raised her hands slightly in a gesture of peace. Okay, just thought I'd ask. As Rachel turned to leave, Carol's shoulders slumped. She knew her brusque response hadn't gone unnoticed, but she wasn't ready to admit that something deeper was wrong. The captain's voice came over the intercom, breaking the cabin's quiet hum. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take a moment to thank you for flying with us today. We've been alerted to some concerns, and I want to assure you they are being handled with the utmost care. Your comfort and safety are our top priorities. The announcement was brief, but carried weight. Passengers exchanged curious glances, and the whispers grew louder. Lily felt her pulse quicken. She glanced at Ethan, who was blissfully unaware of the tension, engrossed in his drawing. Mom, look! I made the water look shiny, he said proudly, holding up his work. Lily forced a smile, her voice steady. It's beautiful, Ethan. You're so talented. As the flight continued, Michael typed a follow-up message to his team, instructing them to prepare a senior HR representative for a debrief upon landing. He wasn't one to act impulsively, but he believed in addressing issues swiftly and thoroughly. Rachel, sensing the growing unease in the cabin, took it upon herself to lighten the mood. She offered extra snacks, engaged passengers in friendly conversation, and even complimented Ethan on his artwork again. Rachel's great, Ethan whispered to Lily. She's like a superhero for the plane. Lily chuckled softly, the comment easing some of her tension. Carol, however, couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in. Each passenger's glance felt heavier than the last, and every whisper seemed directed at her. She finished her duties mechanically, her confidence unraveling with each passing minute. By the time the captain announced the beginning of the descent, the cabin felt thick with unspoken tension. Rachel and the other crew members moved through the rows, ensuring seatbelts were fastened and tray tables stowed. Lily adjusted Ethan's seatbelt and smoothed his hair, her touch reassuring. "Mom, do you think we'll see dolphins at the beach?" Ethan asked, his voice bright. "Maybe," Lily said, her heart softening. "And if we don't, we'll still have the best time." Ethan grinned, his earlier troubles forgotten. As the plane descended, Michael prepared himself for the next steps. He had a responsibility to ensure the airline upheld its values, and he intended to follow through. Carol, meanwhile, sat stiffly in the galley, her hands trembling as she clutched the edge of the counter. The whispers, the captain's announcement, and Michael's scrutiny had all converged into a storm she couldn't ignore. The wheels of the plane touched down smoothly, but for Carol, the journey was far from over. The plane taxied to the gate, and a wave of movement rippled through the cabin as passengers began gathering their belongings. Overhead bins clicked open, voices murmured, and the sounds of a journey's end filled the air. Lily helped Ethan unbuckle his seatbelt, her mind still replaying the events of the flight. She was eager to disembark and leave the tension behind, but a part of her couldn't shake the humiliation of the earlier confrontation. "Mom, do you think we'll see the pilot now?" Ethan asked, clutching his sketchpad tightly. "Maybe," Lily replied with a small smile, trying to match his enthusiasm. "Let's get our bags first." Up at the front of the plane, Michael Brooks stood near the galley, his calm demeanor masking the weight of his next move. Carol had been summoned to the cockpit by the captain, and she now stood stiffly near the controls, her face pale and drawn. "Carol," the captain said, his tone firm but not unkind, "we need to address the incident that occurred during this flight. Michael has brought concerns about your behavior to my attention." Michael stepped forward, his expression measured. "Carol, your interaction with the young passenger and his mother did not align with the values we uphold as an airline. Our passengers deserve respect and empathy, regardless of the situation." Carol opened her mouth to respond, but Michael raised a hand gently to stop her. "This isn't about placing blame," he continued. "It's about accountability and ensuring that incidents like this are addressed appropriately. Effective immediately, you are suspended from duty pending a formal investigation." The words hit Carol like a physical blow. Her grip tightened on the clipboard she held, her knuckles white. "Sir, she began, but her voice faltered. "This is not a decision made lightly," Michael said, his tone unwavering. "But it's necessary to uphold the standards we strive for. You'll be given the opportunity to provide your side during the review process." The captain nodded in agreement. "We'll be documenting this and following up through official channels. For now, you're dismissed from further duties on this flight." Carol's shoulders slumped as the weight of the situation sank in. She gave a stiff nod, unable to meet their eyes, and stepped aside. Meanwhile, the passengers began filing off the plane. Some glanced toward the galley, their expressions ranging from curious to sympathetic. Lily and Ethan joined the line, Ethan clutching his sketchpad eagerly. Rachel intercepted them near the exit, her smile warm despite the undercurrent of tension. She crouched to Ethan's level, holding out a small pin shaped like an airplane. "This is for you," Rachel said, fastening the pin to Ethan's shirt. "It's a little something to commemorate your first flight. You've been such a great passenger." Ethan's face lit up, and he looked at the pin in awe. "Thank you." Rachel smiled, her voice kind. "Thank you, Ethan. Keep up your amazing artwork. I know you'll do great things." Lily felt a rush of gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying layers of meaning. As they stepped off the plane and into the bustling terminal, Ethan's excitement about the pin and their destination began to overshadow the earlier tension. "Mom, do you think I can draw dolphins when we get to the beach?" he asked, skipping slightly as they walked. "Absolutely," Lily replied, her heart lighter. "We'll draw all the dolphins you want." Back in the galley, Carol remained rooted to the spot, her chest tight with a mix of anger, shame, and confusion. She had spent years in this role, navigating difficult passengers and challenging situations. How had it come to this? Rachel passed by her quietly, her expression unreadable but professional. Carol noticed the ease with which Rachel interacted with passengers, the genuine warmth she brought to her work. For the first time, Carol wondered if she had lost that spark somewhere along the way. Michael, now seated in the terminal with his laptop open, composed an email to the HR department. Subject: Immediate action required. Incident on Flight 287. Details: Please initiate a formal review of the conduct of Flight Attendant Carol Andrews. Attached are witness statements from passengers and staff, as well as my own observations. The review must be thorough and fair, ensuring all perspectives are considered. After sending the email, Michael leaned back in his chair. The situation was unfortunate, but necessary changes often came from uncomfortable moments. At the baggage claim, Ethan's chatter filled the air as he described his plans for the beach. Lily nodded along, her mind still processing the events of the flight. She was grateful for Rachel's kindness and Michael's intervention, but the sting of being treated as less than lingered. A man who had been seated near them during the flight approached. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I just wanted to say I think you handled yourself with a lot of grace back there." "That couldn't have been easy." Lily offered a small, tired smile. "Thank you. That means a lot." The man nodded before walking away, leaving Lily with a flicker of reassurance. As they left the terminal and stepped into the fresh air, Lily resolved to focus on the days ahead. This trip wasn't about the flight. It was about giving Ethan a memory to treasure, a chance to dream and grow. Ethan pointed toward the parking lot, his face bright with excitement. "Mom, let's hurry." "I can't wait to see the ocean," Lily laughed, her spirit lifting. "Let's go, buddy. The ocean's waiting for us." Inside the airport, Carol sat in a quiet corner, replaying the events in her mind. The road ahead felt uncertain, but one thing was clear. Something had to change. Carol gripped the steering wheel tightly as she sat in her car in the airport employee lot. The day's events replayed in her mind, each moment sharper than the last. The young boy's wide eyes filled with confusion, the mother's quiet composure despite the humiliation, and Michael Brooks's measured but firm words. It all felt like a tide that refused to recede. She let out a shaky breath and leaned her forehead against the wheel. This wasn't how she had envisioned her career. She'd once been proud to don the uniform, eager to travel the world and make passengers feel at ease. Somewhere along the way, that passion had hardened into routine, and routine into bitterness. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a text from her sister, whom she hadn't spoken to in months. "Saw the news about your flight. Call me if you need to talk." Carol's chest tightened as she stared at the screen. The estrangement between her and her sister had been one of many unresolved parts of her life, and the thought of reaching out felt daunting. After a long pause, she typed back, "Thanks. I'll think about it." Meanwhile, across the city, Michael Brooks sat in his office, reviewing the report from HR. Carol's file showed a troubling pattern. 2 previous complaints of unprofessional behavior, both addressed with warnings, but no formal consequences. The lack of follow-through bothered him. It wasn't just about Carol's actions, it was about the system that had allowed these issues to persist. He composed an email to the airline's leadership team, outlining his concerns and proposing immediate steps to address them. Subject: Staff conduct and systemic improvements needed details. The recent incident on Flight 287 highlights deeper issues within our training and accountability processes. I propose implementing mandatory sensitivity and emotional intelligence training for all crew members. Additionally, we should establish a passenger advocacy team to address complaints promptly and ensure fair resolution." Satisfied, Michael hit send, then leaned back in his chair. He had no illusions about how easy this process would be, but he believed in the necessity of change. At the beachside destination, Lily and Ethan were settling into their small rental cabin. The air smelled of salt and sunshine, and the sound of waves lapping at the shore filled the space with a sense of calm. Ethan had already kicked off his shoes and started unpacking his sketchpad and crayons. "Mom, can I go draw outside? I want to see the beach while I draw." Lily smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Go ahead, but stay close to the cabin. I'll join you in a minute." As Ethan dashed out, Lily sank onto the bed with a sigh. The tension of the flight still lingered, but it was slowly being replaced by the serenity of their surroundings. She glanced at her phone and saw an email notification from the airline. Curious, she opened it. Subject: "Our apologies and commitment to change." "Dear Ms. Hart, on behalf of the airline, I would like to extend our sincerest apologies for your recent experience on Flight 287. Please know that we take this matter seriously and are committed to ensuring a respectful and enjoyable travel experience for all passengers. We have initiated a review of the incident and are taking immediate steps to address it. As a gesture of goodwill, we have credited your account with 25,000 reward miles. Additionally, our customer relations team is available to discuss any further concerns." Lily read the email twice. The apology felt sincere, but it didn't erase the sting of what had happened. Still, it was a step forward, and she appreciated the acknowledgement. She stepped outside to find Ethan seated on a driftwood log, his sketchpad balanced on his knees. He was drawing the ocean, his strokes confident and vibrant. "Mom, look," he said, holding up the page. "I made the waves look shiny, like in the sun." Lily crouched beside him, her heart swelling with pride. "It's beautiful, Ethan. You've captured it perfectly." Ethan grinned, then leaned against her. "I like it here, Mom. It feels nice." Lily wrapped an arm around him, her worries momentarily eclipsed by his joy. This trip was about more than the beach or the flight. It was about giving Ethan memories filled with hope and wonder. Back in her apartment, Carol sat at her kitchen table, a cup of untouched tea in front of her. She had spent the evening reading articles and watching videos on emotional intelligence and customer service. One video, in particular, had stuck with her, a speaker discussing how small acts of kindness could transform tense situations. The realization hit her hard. She had once prided herself on those very skills, but they had eroded over time, replaced by frustration and impatience. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from the airline's HR department, confirming her suspension and outlining the next steps for the investigation. It ended with a note offering resources for professional development. Carol stared at the screen for a long moment before clicking the link. She wasn't sure what lay ahead, but she knew she couldn't stay on this path. She needed to make a change, not just for her job, but for herself. The following morning, sunlight poured through the blinds of Carol's small apartment, casting a golden glow on the table where her untouched cup of tea still sat. The events of the previous day hung over her like a heavy cloud. She had always considered herself a professional, someone who handled the pressures of her job with composure. But now, she was forced to confront the cracks in that facade. Carol scrolled through her phone, stopping at the message from her sister, Nora. The two hadn't spoken much in the last year, their relationship strained by old arguments and Carol's increasingly closed-off demeanor. But Nora's offer to talk lingered in her mind. She hesitated before dialing the number. "Carol?" Nora's voice was cautious, but warm. "It's me," Carol said, her voice quieter than she intended. I wanted to talk." Nora didn't hesitate. "I'm glad you called. What's going on?" The words came haltingly at first, but soon Carol found herself pouring everything out: the incident, on the flight, her suspension, the mounting pressure she had felt for years. Nora listened without interruption, her occasional murmurs of encouragement urging Carol to keep going. "I feel like I've lost who I used to be," Carol admitted finally, her voice breaking. "I used to love my job. Now I don't even recognize myself." Nora was quiet for a moment before responding. "You've been carrying a lot, Carol. Maybe this is your chance to reset, to figure out what you want and how to get back to the things that matter." Carol wiped her eyes, nodding even though Nora couldn't see her. "I don't know where to start." "One step at a time," Nora said gently. "Have you thought about talking to someone or taking a course to help you manage all of this? There's no shame in learning how to approach things differently." Carol's mind went to the link in the email from HR about professional development resources. She had dismissed it initially, but now it felt like a small lifeline. "I'll think about it," Carol said. "Good," Nora replied. "And remember, you're not alone. You can call me anytime." After they hung up, Carol opened her laptop and revisited the HR email. She clicked the link to a workshop on emotional intelligence and communication in high-stress environments. The session was scheduled for the following weekend. Taking a deep breath, she registered for it. At the beachside cabin, Lily and Ethan were starting their first full day of vacation. The rhythmic sound of the waves and the salty breeze made the stress of the flight feel like a distant memory. Ethan tugged on Lily's hand, his bare feet sinking into the warm sand. "Come on, Mom, let's find some shells." They wandered along the shoreline, the sun sparkling on the water as Ethan darted back and forth, collecting treasures. Lily marveled at his boundless energy and his ability to focus entirely on the moment. After an hour of exploring, they spread a blanket on the sand and unpacked a small picnic. Ethan arranged his shells into patterns, turning them into characters for an impromptu story about sea creatures building a castle. "You should write this story down, Mom," Ethan said, his face serious. "You're good at making up stories." Lily laughed softly, though his words touched her. "Maybe I will someday." Back at the cabin later that evening, Lily opened her email to find another message from the airline. Subject: Acknowledgement and Updates. "Dear Ms. Hart, thank you for your understanding and patience regarding the incident on your flight. We want to assure you that we are taking meaningful steps to address what happened, including reviewing our staff training programs to ensure every passenger feels valued and respected. Your experience matters to us, and we're committed to making changes." The message felt more personal than the first, and Lily appreciated the acknowledgement. She debated replying but decided against it for now. Instead, she chose to focus on the moments of kindness they had experienced: Rachel's warmth, Ethan's excitement, and the sense of hope this trip was already giving her. On Saturday, Carol attended the workshop at a community center near her apartment. The room was filled with people from all walks of life, each carrying their own burdens and stories. The facilitator, a woman named Janet, began the session with an exercise in self-reflection. "Think of a moment when you felt overwhelmed or out of control," Janet said. "What emotions were at play? How did those emotions influence your actions?" Carol's mind immediately went to the flight, to the sharpness in her tone when addressing Ethan and the tense aftermath. She wrote in her notebook, "Frustration, impatience, stress. I felt like everything was spinning too fast, and I couldn't stop it." As the workshop progressed, Janet introduced techniques for managing emotions, responding thoughtfully rather than reactively, and recognizing the humanity in every interaction. "You have more power than you think," Janet said, her voice calm but firm. "The power to pause, to reflect, and to choose a different path. That choice can change everything for you and for the people you interact with." The words struck a chord with Carol. For the first time, she saw a way forward not just as a flight attendant, but as someone who could rebuild herself from the inside out. As the sun set over the beach, Lily and Ethan sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. "Mom, today was the best day ever," Ethan said, his voice filled with awe. Lily wrapped an arm around him, her heart full. "I think so too, buddy." The peaceful evening gave her a moment to reflect. The challenges of the flight had led to a ripple of changes, not just for the airline, but for her and Ethan as well. It was a reminder that even difficult moments could lead to growth. Back in her apartment, Carol sat at her kitchen table with her notebook, jotting down what she had learned from the workshop. A small part of her felt lighter, as though she had finally begun shedding the weight of years of frustration. She reached for her phone and texted Nora, "Thank you for encouraging me to try. It's helping. Let's talk soon." Carol didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to face it with an open heart and a willingness to change. Carol spent the days following the workshop reflecting deeply on what she had learned. The exercises had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself, her tendency to react defensively under stress, her habit of seeing passengers as problems rather than people. But alongside the discomfort came a renewed sense of purpose. One afternoon, as she sipped coffee at her kitchen table, Carol's phone buzzed with an email from the airline's HR department. Subject: Invitation to participate in staff training program. Dear Ms. Andrews, as part of our ongoing commitment to improving our customer service standards, we are launching a sensitivity and emotional intelligence training program for our staff. Your recent participation in external workshops aligns with these efforts, and we would like to invite you to share your insights during an upcoming session. Your experience could provide valuable perspective for your colleagues. Carol stared at the email for a long moment. The idea of standing in front of her peers, admitting her mistakes, and sharing what she had learned felt daunting. But as she reread the invitation, she realized this could be her opportunity to make amends, not just to her employer, but to herself. Meanwhile, at the beach, Lily and Ethan were soaking up every moment of their vacation. Ethan had spent the morning building an elaborate sandcastle, complete with shell-topped towers and a moat filled with seawater. "Mom, do you think the dolphins will like my castle?" Ethan asked, squinting at the horizon as though expecting the creatures to appear. "I think they'll love it," Lily said, laughing softly. Her phone buzzed with a notification. She wiped her hands on a towel and opened her email, finding a follow-up message from the airline. Subject: Updates and Commitments. Dear Ms. Hart, we wanted to share an update regarding the incident on your recent flight. The staff member involved is participating in additional training to address the concerns raised, and we have implemented new policies to ensure all passengers feel valued. Your experience has been a catalyst for meaningful changes, and we thank you for bringing it to our attention. The message was accompanied by a request for feedback, asking if she felt the airline's response had been satisfactory. Lily appreciated the transparency and the acknowledgement of her experience. After a moment's thought, she replied, "Thank you for your response. I hope these changes lead to better experiences for all passengers. While the incident was difficult, I'm glad to see the airline taking steps toward improvement." Ethan tugged at her arm, his face glowing with excitement. "Mom, come look! I made a tunnel under the castle." Lily set her phone aside, smiling as she joined him in the sand. The email was a reminder that even small voices could spark change, but for now, she chose to focus on the simple joys of the moment. The day of the training session arrived, and Carol found herself standing in front of a group of flight attendants in a bright conference room at the airline's headquarters. She clutched her notes tightly, her palms damp with nerves. Michael Brooks, seated in the back of the room, offered her a small nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, Carol began. "I'll admit, this isn't easy for me. I've spent years as a flight attendant, and I thought I had all the answers. But I've realized that experience doesn't mean much if you lose sight of what really matters: treating people with respect and empathy." She recounted the incident on the flight, her voice steady despite the vulnerability it required. When I raised my voice to that little boy and his mother, I wasn't thinking about their perspective. I let my stress and frustration take over, and that wasn't fair to them or to the other passengers who witnessed it. Carol went on to share what she had learned from the workshop she attended, emphasizing the importance of pausing to reflect before reacting. We have a unique opportunity as flight attendants. We can turn a stressful situation into a positive one simply by choosing kindness. That's a choice I want to make every day moving forward. The room was quiet as she finished, but the weight of her words was palpable. After a moment, one of the attendants raised their hand. "Thank you for sharing that," the attendant said. "It takes a lot of courage to admit mistakes and learn from them. I think we can all relate to feeling overwhelmed sometimes." A few others nodded in agreement, and Carol felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps sharing her story could help foster the change she wished she'd embraced sooner. After the session, Michael approached her. "You handled that well," he said. "It's not easy to put yourself out there like that, but it's the first step toward rebuilding trust." Carol nodded, her voice quiet but firm. "Thank you for giving me the chance. I want to do better." As their vacation drew to a close, Lily and Ethan prepared for their return flight. Ethan was eager to show Rachel, the kind flight attendant, the new drawings he had made of dolphins and his sandcastle. As they boarded, Lily noticed a subtle but noticeable difference in the crew's demeanor. The smiles seemed more genuine, the greetings warmer. Rachel greeted them enthusiastically, remembering Ethan immediately. "Look at you, our little artist," Rachel said, crouching to his level. "What did you draw this time?" Ethan held up his sketchpad, beaming as Rachel admired his work. Lily felt a wave of relief and gratitude. This flight already felt different, a sign that change, however small, was possible. That evening, as Carol sat in her apartment, she reflected on her journey so far. She didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time in years, she felt a sense of purpose. She opened her laptop and began drafting an email to Nora. Subject: "Thank you. Dear Nora, thank you for encouraging me to take that first step. The workshop, the training, it's all helping me see things more clearly. I still have a lot to learn, but I'm starting to feel like myself again. Let's catch up soon. I owe you coffee." As she hit send, Carol felt a flicker of hope. Redemption wasn't a destination. It was a journey, one she was finally ready to embrace. The return flight for Lily and Ethan felt worlds apart from their earlier experience. From the moment they boarded, the crew's warmth and attentiveness created an atmosphere of comfort. Rachel, the cheerful flight attendant who had been so kind to Ethan, once again made him feel like the star of the plane. "Welcome back, Ethan," Rachel said as they stepped on board. She crouched to his level, her genuine smile lighting up her face. "Do you have more drawings for me today?" Ethan eagerly held up his sketchpad, flipping to a page filled with dolphins jumping through colorful waves. "This is my favorite one," Rachel gasped playfully. "It's amazing. You're a real artist, you know that?" Ethan's face lit up, and he glanced at Lily for confirmation. Lily smiled, feeling a warmth that had been missing on their first flight. The small, thoughtful interactions continued throughout the journey. Rachel brought Ethan an extra snack and even allowed him to visit the galley to meet another flight attendant. Ethan's laughter echoed through the cabin, a stark contrast to the tension of their first flight. Lily sat back in her seat, letting out a quiet sigh of relief. This time, she didn't feel like an outsider or a burden. She felt like a valued passenger. At the airline's headquarters, Carol was beginning to find her footing again. Following her session with the flight attendants, she had volunteered to participate in the company's sensitivity training program. Her role was to share her story as a cautionary tale and an example of how mistakes could lead to meaningful change. Carol stood in a brightly lit training room, addressing a group of newly hired flight attendants. Her nerves had lessened since her first presentation, and she spoke with a quiet confidence born of experience. I used to think that being a good flight attendant meant sticking to the rules no matter what, she said, her voice steady. But I've learned that it's just as important, if not more so, to see the person behind the seat number. A smile, a kind word, or even just a moment of patience can change someone's entire experience. The room was silent, the new hires hanging on her every word. Carol continued, I'm not proud of the mistakes I've made, but I am proud of the steps I'm taking to learn from them. I hope that by sharing my story, I can help you avoid some of those same missteps. After the session, a young flight attendant approached her. Thank you for being so honest, the woman said. It's easy to forget how much impact we have on passengers, but your story really made me think about the kind of attendant I want to be. Carol nodded, a small but genuine smile forming. That means a lot. Just remember, it's never too late to learn and grow. Back on the plane, Ethan was chatting animatedly with Rachel about his favorite animals. Rachel listened intently, her encouragement giving him the confidence to share more of his ideas. Lily watched the interaction, her heart swelling with gratitude. She thought about the email she had received from the airline, outlining the changes they were implementing. While she had initially been skeptical, the actions she witnessed now seemed genuine. Midway through the flight, Michael Brooks made his way down the aisle. Spotting Lily and Ethan, he paused to greet them. Miss Hart, he said warmly, how has the flight been for you and Ethan today? Lily looked up, recognizing him from the first flight. It's been wonderful, thank you. The crew has gone out of their way to make us feel welcome. Ethan looked up from his sketch pad and grinned. I got to show Rachel my drawings and she said I'm an artist. Michael chuckled. I'd say she's absolutely right. He turned back to Lily. I just wanted to follow up personally. I hope this experience reflects the commitment we're making to improve. Your feedback helped guide those efforts. Lily nodded, her voice soft but sincere. It means a lot that you took the time to address what happened. I can see the difference already. Michael smiled. Thank you for giving us the chance. And thank you, Ethan, for sharing your art with us. It's been a highlight of the flight. As Michael continued down the aisle, Lily felt a sense of closure she hadn't expected. His acknowledgement and the crew's kindness had turned a difficult memory into something positive. In her apartment later that evening, Carol reflected on her latest training session. Each presentation felt like another step forward, a chance to rebuild the trust she had lost, not just with passengers, but with herself. She opened her laptop and began drafting a proposal for the airline's leadership team. Subject: Passenger Advocacy Initiative Proposal. As part of our continued efforts to enhance passenger experiences, I recommend establishing a passenger advocacy team. This team would serve as a resource for passengers, ensuring their concerns are heard and addressed promptly. By creating this bridge between staff and passengers, we can reinforce our commitment to respect and empathy. Carol reread the proposal, her fingers hesitating over the keyboard. Submitting it felt like a risk, but it also felt like the right thing to do. With a deep breath, she hit send. As the plane touched down, Ethan clapped his hands, his excitement bubbling over. We're back, Mom, he exclaimed, grabbing his sketchpad and backpack. Rachel met them at the door as they disembarked. Thanks for flying with us, Ethan. I hope we'll see you again soon. Ethan beamed. I hope so too. Lily turned to Rachel, her voice filled with gratitude. Thank you for everything. You've made this trip so special for us. Rachel's smile widened. It's been a pleasure. Have a wonderful day. Walking through the terminal, Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The return flight had been a reminder of what travel could be: joyful, welcoming, and filled with small moments of kindness. For Carol, Michael, Lily, and Ethan, the ripple effects of their shared journey were still unfolding. But each step they took brought them closer to understanding that even the smallest actions could make the biggest difference. Lily and Ethan exited the airport, their faces glowing with the joy of their trip. The smooth return flight had erased much of the tension from their first experience, leaving behind a newfound optimism. As they hailed a cab, Ethan clutched his sketchpad, excitedly recounting the kindness of Rachel and the positive changes he had noticed on the flight. "Mom, do you think all planes have people like Rachel now?" Ethan asked, his wide eyes filled with curiosity. "I hope so, sweetheart," Lily replied with a smile. "It makes traveling so much better, doesn't it?" Ethan nodded enthusiastically. "Next time we fly, I'm going to draw an even cooler picture to show them." At the airline's headquarters, Carol was about to step into her first leadership meeting since her suspension. Her proposal for a passenger advocacy team had gained traction, and Michael Brooks had invited her to present it to the executive board. The conference room was spacious, with large windows overlooking the bustling city below. Carol adjusted her blazer nervously, clutching a folder of notes and research. "You'll do fine," Michael said reassuringly, as they waited for the others to join. "Your insights have already made an impact." As the meeting began, Carol stood to address the room. Her voice trembled slightly at first, but as she spoke about her own journey and the importance of bridging the gap between passengers and crew, her confidence grew. "Our passengers trust us with their safety and comfort," Carol said, her gaze steady. "But trust goes beyond technical expertise. It's built through every interaction, every small act of kindness. A passenger advocacy team can ensure that trust is upheld, even when challenges arise." The board listened intently, nodding at her points. By the end of the presentation, several executives voiced their support for the idea, and the CEO agreed to move forward with a pilot program to test the initiative. After the meeting, Michael approached Carol with a rare smile. "You've come a long way," he said. "This program has the potential to make a real difference." "Thank you for believing in me," Carol replied, her voice sincere. For Lily and Ethan, life had settled back into a comfortable rhythm. Lily had returned to work, but she found herself reflecting on the trip often. The positive changes she had witnessed on the return flight gave her hope not just for the airline, but for herself and Ethan as well. One evening, as Ethan worked on a new drawing at the kitchen table, Lily opened her laptop and began typing. She had always loved writing, but her responsibilities as a single mother had left little time for creative pursuits. The trip, however, had reignited her passion. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she wrote a story inspired by Ethan's drawings and their shared journey. It was about a boy and his mother who embarked on an adventure in the sky, meeting kind-hearted people who helped them along the way. "Mom, what are you doing?" Ethan asked, peeking over her shoulder. "I'm writing a story," Lily replied, smiling. "And guess what? You're the hero." Ethan's face lit up. "Really? Can I help?" "Of course," Lily said, pulling him onto her lap. Together, they brainstormed ideas, laughing as they imagined fantastical scenarios for their fictional counterparts. At the airline, Carol began her new role as a mentor to junior staff, sharing her experiences and helping them navigate the challenges of working in high-pressure environments. The pilot program for the passenger advocacy team launched with promising results, and Carol found fulfillment in knowing she was contributing to a culture of empathy and respect. Rachel, the ever-cheerful flight attendant, was among the first to join the program. Her ability to connect with passengers made her a natural fit, and she thrived in her new role. "Thank you for recommending me," Rachel said to Carol one afternoon. "I love being part of something that makes a difference." Carol smiled. "You've been making a difference all along. This just gives you a bigger platform to do it." Months later, Lily received an unexpected email from the airline. Subject: Share your story. Dear Ms. Hart, as part of our efforts to celebrate passenger experiences, we're inviting select travelers to share their stories with us. Your feedback during and after your recent flights has been invaluable, and we'd love to hear more about your journey. Lily hesitated at first, but decided to respond. She wrote about the difficulties of the first flight, the unexpected kindness from Rachel, and the positive changes she and Ethan had noticed on their return. To her surprise, the airline replied with an offer to feature her story in their monthly newsletter. They also asked if Ethan would allow one of his drawings to be included. "Ethan," Lily said, holding up the email, "they want to share your art in a magazine. What do you think?" Ethan's eyes widened. "Really? Do you think they'll like it?" "I know they will," Lily said, hugging him. As Carol read through the latest passenger feedback report, she came across Lily's submission. The heartfelt account of her experience and Ethan's joyful illustrations brought tears to Carol's eyes. She sent a quick message to Rachel. "Great job on Flight 287. You made a real difference for this family." Rachel replied almost instantly, "Thank you. It was a team effort. Glad they had a better experience." For Carol, it was a reminder of why she had fought to rebuild herself. Every interaction mattered, and every small change contributed to a greater good. That evening, Lily printed out the newsletter featuring her and Ethan's story, framing it as a keepsake. As Ethan admired his artwork in print, Lily felt a sense of pride and hope for the future. Challenges would come, but so would opportunities for kindness, resilience, and growth. Their journey had shown her that even the hardest moments could lead to something better, and that made all the difference. Months passed, and the ripple effects of that one flight continued to shape lives in unexpected ways. For Carol, Lily, Ethan, and even Michael, the incident had sparked transformations that went far beyond a single plane ride. Carol stood at the front of a training room at the airline's headquarters, addressing a group of newly hired flight attendants. Confidence now radiated from her as she spoke about the power of empathy in their profession. "Every day you'll meet passengers who are tired, anxious, or just trying to get somewhere important," Carol said, her voice steady. "You have the opportunity to make their journey better sometimes with nothing more than a kind word or a smile. Never underestimate the impact you can have." After the session, a young flight attendant approached her. "Ms. Andrews," the woman said shyly, "I just wanted to thank you. Hearing your story makes me feel like I can handle the tough days ahead." Carol smiled warmly, her heart swelling with pride. "You can. Just remember, it's not about perfection. It's about learning and doing your best every day." Carol's journey of self-reflection and growth had brought her to a place of fulfillment she hadn't imagined possible. Through her work with the airline's passenger advocacy program and her mentoring role, she found herself making meaningful contributions to the company's culture. Meanwhile, Lily and Ethan were back home, where their story with the airline had turned into something extraordinary. Ethan's drawing had been featured not only in the airline's newsletter, but also in a social media campaign highlighting passenger experiences. "Mom, they used my picture," Ethan had exclaimed when he first saw the post. His excitement was infectious, filling their small apartment with laughter. The recognition had brought a spark of creativity to their lives. Lily and Ethan spent evenings collaborating on their story, which they had decided to turn into a children's book. The tale of a boy and his mother navigating an adventurous plane ride was filled with colorful illustrations and lessons about kindness and courage. Their project caught the attention of a local publisher, and before long, they were holding the first printed copies of Soaring Together. Ethan held the book tightly, beaming. "Mom, do you think other kids will like it?" "I think they'll love it," Lily said, hugging him. Their lives had changed in ways Lily never anticipated. What had started as a stressful flight had become the inspiration for a dream she hadn't realized she still carried. Michael Brooks sat in his corner office, reviewing the latest updates on the passenger advocacy program. The initiative had been a success, with complaints dropping significantly and positive feedback increasing. Employees like Rachel had thrived in their roles, creating a new standard for customer care. Michael reflected on the day he had intervened with Carol. It hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary, and seeing the impact of those actions filled him with pride. His phone buzzed with a new email, and he smiled when he saw it was from Lily Hart. Subject: Thank you. Dear Mr. Brooks, I just wanted to thank you for the changes you've helped bring about. Our experience on the return flight was wonderful, and the kindness we encountered made a lasting impression on me and Ethan. I'm happy to share that our story has turned into a children's book, inspired by our journey. Thank you for listening, and for showing that small actions can lead to meaningful change. Michael leaned back in his chair, feeling a sense of validation. Moments like these reminded him why he had dedicated his career to building a company that valued its customers and employees alike. As the seasons changed, Lily and Ethan found themselves on another flight, this time heading to a book festival where they had been invited to share soaring together. Ethan wore his airplane pin proudly, a reminder of his first flight. Rachel greeted them with the same warmth as before. "Welcome back, Ethan," she said, crouching to his level. "Are you ready for another adventure?" "Always," Ethan said with a grin. Lily settled into her seat, marveling at how far they had come. The memory of that first tense flight had been transformed into something beautiful, a reminder that even the toughest moments could lead to incredible opportunities. As the plane ascended, Ethan leaned toward the window, gazing at the clouds. "Mom, do you think the sky looks different every time we fly?" he asked. Lily smiled, her heart full. "I think it does, Ethan. And every time, it's just as amazing." The plane soared higher, carrying them toward a future filled with possibility. For Carol, Lily, Ethan, and Michael, their paths had been forever altered by that one flight. Through challenges and acts of kindness, they had each found a way to rise above, embracing growth, resilience, and hope. Their journeys were a testament to the idea that even small actions, an apology, a kind word, a second chance could spark lasting change. As the plane disappeared into the endless expanse of sky, it left behind a story that would inspire everyone it touched to dream, grow, and believe in the power of kindness. Thank you for joining us on this heartwarming journey of growth, resilience, and kindness. The story of Lily, Ethan, Carol, and Michael reminds us that even the smallest actions can spark meaningful change. Whether it's a second chance, a moment of understanding, or a simple act of compassion, these moments can shape lives in ways we never expect. If you enjoyed this story and its message, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear how this story resonated with you. And don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with someone who could use a little inspiration, and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Together, let's keep spreading hope, kindness, and positivity. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.